Chapter 17. Dream and Hope. Mary. He came round that morning. I had just snapped at Abigail for doing something that annoyed me. I can't even remember what it was now. And she'd gone off in tears. I sat down heavily on the flat stone a little uphill from the house. Ugh, I groaned, my head in my hands. I wished Reuben hadn't snored all night. I wished Moore weren't so cross with me. I wished... Well, no, I didn't wish that none of it had ever happened, but I wished it could be easier, simpler, different. I was feeling so sorry for myself that I didn't even hear Joseph's footsteps. But there he was, with a mad glint in his eyes and 2 bits of leaf sticking out of his hair. "Come on," he said, "I want to show you something." And he set off through the almond trees. No one else was about. Every family in the village was still in their tabernacles, clearing them away by now and piling up the tree branches against walls. They'd dry out in the sun and then be used on the fire later. But as I followed Joseph to his house, I saw that he hadn't piled away the branches of his family's shelter. He'd just moved them. I caught him up just at the corner of the house, and he took my hand to lead me to the side where he'd been building the extra room for us to live in. The walls were sturdy with stones and plastered mud. But the roof, it wasn't just a big hole anymore. It was finished. Or sort of finished. It was a thick bristle of green. Joseph had built me a tabernacle. "I have prepared a place for you," said Joseph formally, "and now we can be married." He smiled shyly, looking at his feet. "Obviously, I'll make a proper permanent roof first." I stared at him. "But..." "I know the truth," he said quickly, holding my gaze. "I had a dream." "A dream?" But another voice interrupted. "A dream," drawled my brother Reuben as he strolled around the corner of the house. "How nice." Joseph went red. "A lovely dream, and now it's all sorted, is that right, Joseph?" said Reuben. "My sinful sister will become your wedded wife. Well, I hope you know what you're letting yourself in for." "Reuben," I began, but Joseph was already speaking. "She's done nothing wrong. And yes, I am going to marry her," he said quietly. "The dream was from God. This is all his plan." Reuben smirked. "Okay. And the census, that's his plan too, is it? Timed exactly when he wants it?" "The census?" asked Joseph. "Have they announced..." "Everyone has to go to the town their family comes from to be registered, on the orders of the emperor himself. Heard of him?" I was staring at my brother. I'd heard nothing about this. But Reuben was not stopping to explain. He smirked again. "So you've got to toddle off to Bethlehem." He jabbed a finger at Joseph. "And you, dear sister, will now have to go with him, even in your, delicate condition." "Have they announced when it'll be?" asked Joseph, finishing his earlier question. Now I stared at him. Did everyone know about this except me? "Just at the time when she'll be ready to pop, apparently," answered Reuben with a cruel smile. "Still sure you want to take her? Still sure about that, dream?" Joseph bit his lip, and I thought for a moment he'd change his mind. He was only getting ready to give my brother a good glare. "We're getting married," he said, "census or no census." And he squeezed my hand. "This doesn't mean you're forgiven," said Ma. After that, I went around feeling like someone had tied a big thick rope right around my chest and was squeezing it tighter and tighter. When you get married, there is a lot to do and think about, and your mother is supposed to help you with everything and be all excited, but mine was leaving me to do it all on my own. She seemed determined to make it clear how little she thought of me now. Joseph's ma wasn't much more helpful, even though it was her family and her house I was coming into. But my little sister was even more excited than she'd been for the Feast of Tabernacles, and that made up for it a bit. Plus, Joseph was on my side, and when I was with him, the rope felt less tight. He'd set up in his father's old place and turned himself into a village carpenter. I spent as much time as I could in his workshop. Maybe we should go to Bethlehem early, he said one day as I squinted at the shirt I was mending. Make sure we have somewhere good to stay so you're comfortable for the birth. Somewhere to stay costs money, though, I replied. The longer we're there, the more it costs. He twisted his face. If only I hadn't lost that job. I'm glad you did, I told him, because it means you're here. I tried to look encouraging. It's all right. I'm sure we'll be fine wherever we stay. I know, Joseph said. But that was not the end of the subject. I'm worried about the journey as well, he told me the following day. If you're nearly ready to give birth, it will be dangerous for you to travel. Joseph, it'll be fine, I insisted. This is God's child. God's child. Nothing bad is going to happen. But what if it does? His face was anguished. What if we do something wrong and the baby dies and it's all our fault? There were a lot of conversations like that. But eventually we agreed a plan. Joseph's parents would go to Bethlehem a little early. They'd go to Joseph's uncle and aunt's house and ask if we could all stay there. Joseph and I would travel more slowly, and then when we arrived, everything would be ready. We don't need to be afraid, I said to him. Let's just enjoy getting married, all right? All right, he answered. So we did. That day there was enough food to feed half the village and what felt like a whole year's worth of dancing. Poor Abigail got so tired she looked in danger of falling over where she stood. Ma bundled her in her arms and took her to bed. To my surprise, when Ma came outside again, she threw her arms around me and burst into tears. My little girl, she said through the sobs, you're going to go all the way to Bethlehem and you'll probably die on the way and I'll never see you again. I decided to take this as a good sign and not linger on the probable death part. I'll come back, Ma, I promise. But what if you don't? And it's all been so awful. The tears began afresh. It's all right, I said, although my own eyes were filling up now too. What my mother had just said was almost an apology. It's all right. When she let me go, I took a huge gulp of fresh air. My lungs and my heart both felt as big as the sky. The world was, well, it felt newborn. It had hope in it again. Then Joseph grabbed my hand and whirled me into another dance.